answer key online. All right, the take-home quiz. Take-home quiz number 1. Mark your own. Oh, let's see. My favorite student, she gets everything right. It's amazing. Good old Anne. All vectors have both what and, magnitude. Really, in the back row? Yes? Like you're proud of getting question 0 right? I called it question 0 for a reason. I'll give them a free mark without giving them a free, oh boy. Now we get into the math. A cannonball is fired horizontally from a cannon on top of a 25-meter high cliff. You know what? I need to dulp. So I drew my little picture over here. Horizontally, that's going to be kind of nice. It says the velocity is 80 meters per second, and it says that the cliff is 25 meters high. And they want me to find t. So right away I said if I'm finding time, I'm going to break this up into horizontal and vertical. I know horizontally that ax is 0. I know vertically that ay is negative 9.8. And vy initial is 0. Vx is 80. And I know that dy is, come on, pen, negative 25. Can I make this a bit bigger? I think I can. I said I have 3 things in my vertical column. I can find t. I'm going to use d equals vit plus a half at squared. But this is nice because vi is 0. I still get a quadratic, but it's a quadratic where I can get the t by itself and square root. The real issues for quadratics are when you have a t squared and a t term, an x squared and an x term, because then you got to pull out factoring or the quadratic formula. Here, I said I'm pretty sure time is going to be 2 times d divided by a square rooted. I'm pretty sure that time is going to be the square root of 2 times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8. And I get, I have no idea, 2 times negative 25 divided by negative 9.8, square root of 5.1, 2 point what? 2.26? Yes? 2.26 seconds. Now, if you got the right answer, you get 2 out of 2. If you missed the units, take off a half mark. If your sig figs were to 4 sig figs or 1 sig fig, not that you would ever do that, take off a half mark. Now, if you didn't get the right answer, how would I mark this? I would give you probably 1 mark if I saw that, a half mark if I saw that you had tried sticking in the numbers, and then a half mark for the answer, which means you never, ever, 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 ever want to leave a question blank. You can always get lots of part marks. You'll notice if you got the answer wrong, but you did everything right, you get 1.5 out of 2, or 75%. B, how far does the cannonball travel horizontally? This looks like a job for dx, which I'm pretty sure is vxt plus a half at. No, a is 0 horizontally. I think this is going to be, what was vx? 80 times 2.26 times 80. I still have that 2.26 stored on my calculator. Do you get 181? Meters. 1.8 times 10 to the 2 meters. Now, if you got number 1 wrong, but you took this time value and you plugged it in there and you multiplied by 80, as long as you did that right, you can get 2 out of 2 on this question. Okay? By the way, I would give you 1 mark for that, 1 mark for the answer, probably. Next page over. Launched at an angle above the horizontal. I'm going to dulp above the question. That's going to give me some room. So let's see here. It's looking kind of like this, 28 meters per second at an angle of 58 degrees. They want me to find Vx and Vy. Now, some of you may have memorized the shortcut. You may have noticed that Vx is cos and Vy is sine. And if you jump straight to that, great. But remember, if you forget, Zach, you can always derive it by drawing the triangle and going, hey, that's opposite, that's hypotenuse, that's adjacent, and you should be able to figure out which trig functions it is. It is cos for Vx, and Vy is sine for this unit. Anyways, eventually that'll, as we get into more complicated diagrams, that might change, but we got a good shortcut. So I'm going to say Vx is going to be 28 cos 58. Vy is going to be 28 sine 58. 28 cos 58. Now, I'm going to carry a few extra sig figs here in my work because I have a feeling I'm going to be using this later on, Nico. But for my answer in the blank there where it says Vx, I'll go to 2 or 3 sig figs. So I'm going to write 14.84 up here. But down here, I'm going to write, hey, 14.8 meters per second. Half mark off. If you forgot the units, you get 1 mark for that puppy. Over here, it's going to be second function, boom, 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 sine. And I'm going to write 23.75 up here. But this is going to be actually 23.7 if I round off to 3 sig figs, not 23.8. Whoever's clicking the pen can stop before I lovingly cram it down their throat. Thank you. Someone's looking at me, shocked. Cram it? Huh? How many answers are there for this? 2. How many marks is it? 2. How about 1 mark for each answer? I'll be honest, on a test, I'd actually probably give you a half mark if I saw that you'd use cos and that you used sine. I don't know what happens, but every year, I got some kid on the test who puts Vx where Vy is and Vy where Vx is. Don't do that! Please. And I think it's purely sloppiness. Like, I think they know what vertical, they know the difference between vertical and horizontal. I think they do. They just, for some reason, put them in the wrong blanks. So don't let that be you. I'll mercilessly mock you. B, what's the maximum height? Maximum height. Hey, this looks like a job for vertical. Vertically, I know AY is negative 9.8. I know Vy initial is, and now I'll use my longer value of 23.75. Oh, I know one more thing. I know Vy final at the top. Vy final at the top is 0. And they want me to find dy. I'm looking for an equation that has ay, Vy initial, V final, and d. I think this is the Vf squared equals Vi squared plus 280. By the way, you could also have found time and then use time to find d, but I'm going to do this all in one fell swoop. I'm pretty sure that d equals Vf squared minus Vi squared all over 2a. It's going to end up being 0 squared, which is 0, minus 23.75 squared all over 2 times negative 9.8. 0 minus, hey, I still have this answer stored in my calculator, squared divided by bracket 2 times negative 9.8. Do you get a height of 28.8? Yeah. Meters. Positive, because it is above us. How would I mark this, by the way? I would probably give you 1 mark if I saw that, a half mark for the numbers, and a half mark for the answer. But if you got it right, you get 2 out of 2. How long is the projectile in the air for? I think they're really saying find time. And I think I can use t equals Vf minus Vi all over a 0 minus 23.75 all over negative 9.8. 0 minus 23.75 close bracket divided by negative 9.8. Is it in the air for 2.42 seconds? 2.43, 2.4 what? 2.42? Is it 2.42? 2.42. Ah! Or is it in the air for that long? What's wrong with this?
Check your BBM.
If I use this, I have to double the time of flight for it to get back down to the ground. Right, Yuchan? Right? Or what I could have done if I wanted to do it in one fell swoop, I could have done this. Same approach. What's V final when it hits the ground? V final when it hits the ground is the same speed it took off at, but negative. That's V final minus V initial all over negative 9.8. Either of those methods is just fine. Since I use this one, and I'm just going to double it, times by 2, the answer is 4.85. I would take 4.84. I would take 4.86. I'm not too fussy on the third sig fig as long as it's plus or minus 1 of the answer that I get. If you wrote 2.42, give yourself 1 mark out of 2. And make sure you included units. I'm sensing that Brett might have made a mistake to that effect. Is that right, Brett?
Possibly.
Are you angry?
He's trash talking over here.
Are you angry at yourself, Brett? You should be, but that way you won't do it on the test, yes? Ah, good. Mission accomplished. Is the goal. Turn the page. Some vectors. 2 forces act upon... Oh, you know what? I see directions. I better draw a compass. It says 2 forces act upon a point Q. Force F1 is 5 newtons due east. Force F2 is 12 newtons due south. Find the resultant force R. It's going to be 5 plus 12 equals... I think when you do the Pythagoras, it works out dead even, doesn't it? It's exactly 13 with no decimals, I think, yes?
Yeah.
So here's our mystery force. When you do the Pythagoras, you get 12 newtons. That's the magnitude, but it said find the resultant force, and there is a vector symbol above the resultant force, R or F, I don't care what you called it, but they definitely wanted a vector, which means I need an angle, theta. Oh, 13 newtons. Yeah, thank you. It's the 5, 12, 13 triangle. 5 squared is 25, 12 squared is 144. Add them up, you get 169 squared is 13. Opposite, adjacent. It's usually tangent. Not always, but usually. Tan theta equals opposite over adjacent. Opposite over adjacent. You get 67.4 degrees. What of what? I would take 67 degrees, by the way, because that's 2 sig figs. What of what? South of north, east of west? What of what? South of east. How would I mark this? First of all, 1 mark for the diagram. 1 mark, whoa, let's try that again, Mr. Duke. 1 mark for the 13, a half mark for the angle, and a half mark for the what of what. Okay. Number 4, the nasty one. Yeah. Actually, it's kind of like the airplane one that we actually did it as an example somewhere in that lesson. Or I think we did 2 airplane one. I know we did 1 airplane one. In fact, I'm fairly sure I even said when we did the airplane one that I liked that question. Let's go find out just to satisfy our curiosity. I think it was lesson 3. Was it this one? Let's go see. Lesson 3, an airplane. Oh, look at that. Holy smokes, that looks almost identical, but with different numbers. I even see, wow. You mean there was one just like it in your notes, different numbers, but kind of the same idea? Perish the thought. Amazing. You'd think Mr. Dewick had that in mind when he did that example with us. Who knows? Who can figure out his crazy mind? Compass. Here's the theory. The velocity of the plane's engines, the 220 meters, combined with the velocity of whatever the crosswind, that's what gives the velocity relative to the ground. As a picture, 220 combined with plus 30 degrees north of east. To draw that, I'm going to draw east first. I'm going to go 30 degrees north of east. It's going to look like that. 30 degrees, and it's 80 long. How do I add two vectors together? Draw them? Darn right. Do you know that your brother also sits in that same desk in my class?
Really?
And apparently you guys sit in the same desk in another class? Freaks. 220, 80, that's the ground velocity. I need an angle inside this. First of all, is this going to be SOHCAHTOA? No. I need an angle inside this triangle. Well, for what it's worth, this angle right here is 30 degrees, which doesn't help me exactly, but it does let me figure out how big this angle right here is. How big is that angle right there? Got to be 150 because the two of them together form a straight line of 180. So there's my angle inside. Whoop, lost my 80. How will I solve this? Do I have a pair? Is this a sine law? Let's see. Do I know both of those? No. Do I know both of those? No. Do I know both of those? No. It's not sine law. It's cosine law. It's going to be the ground velocity squared equals 220 squared plus 80 squared minus 2 times 220 times 80 cosine of 150. It's going to be 220 squared plus 80 squared minus 2 times 220 times 80 cosine of 150. I'm going 85,000 meters. Oh, what have I forgotten to do? Don't forget to square root. It's doable. Almost exactly 292. So the ground the ground speed is 292 meters per second. Now I need to make it a velocity. I need an at. I think the angle that I'm going to find is, yoink, this one right here. How can I find it? Well, now that I know that this is 292, I now have a pair. I know both of those. This looks like a job for sine law, which is way nicer than cosine law. I can now say the sine of mystery angle theta divided by what's across from it, 80, equals the sine of 150 divided by what's across from it, which I now know is 292 point blah, 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 blah. It's on my calculator. If I get sine theta by itself, I'll get 80 sine 150 divided by 292, because stuff moves diagonally. I'll get 80 sine 150 divided by, heck, I'll even use my answer button because I have that 292 stored as my most recent answer. And I get an angle of 0.136. Oh, no. This isn't the angle. This is the sine of the angle. How do I find theta? Second function, sine of that there decimal. And I get an angle of 7.9 degrees. 7.9 degrees. What of what? North of south, east of west? What of what? north of east. How will I mark this? First of all, if you drew this diagram and you had a 220, you had an 80 pointing up and to the right, and you had the 150 inside there, that gets you 1 mark. If you didn't get the 150 inside there, I'm only going to give you a half mark. Then I would give you 1 mark for the 292, a half mark for the theta, and a half mark for the what of what? And then I would turn the page. Or flip it. No, you guys are 1 page over still. Okay. Cliff. They gave me the height. They told me this is 36. And they're saying, find the range. Okay. First thing I'm going to have to do is components. First thing I'm going to do is go back to red, Mr. Do It. Come on. Vx is going to be Vy is going to be, and I know this works out to exactly 10, 20 cos 30, and this works out to 17.32. I'm going to divide this up into horizontal and vertical. Horizontally, I know AX is 0. Vertically, I know AY is negative 9.8. I know that VX is 17.32. I know VY initial is 10. I know, come on, pen. I know DY is negative 36. I need to find time. How many of you use the quadratic formula to find time? Just curious. How many of you found VF and used that to find time? Okay, I'll do it that way in the quadratic formula, people. Most of you are cheating with your solvers anyways, so what do I care? I'll go Vy final squared equals Vy initial squared plus 2AD. I'll go Vy final squared equals 10 squared plus 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 36. I'll go 10 squared plus 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 36 square root. Why is the answer not 28.383? Because not. Negative. I have to remember that. That's the only, if you're going to use the Vy final method, you have to clue in, your final velocity is heading down, at least at this stage. So a negative, I'm going to go negative 28.383. Vy final equals negative 28 point, what did I say it was? 383? 383 meters per second. Okay, now I can find time. Time is going to be V final minus V initial over A, negative 28.383 minus 10 all over negative 9.8. Bracket. Negative answer. Hey, that works. Minus 10 all over negative 9.8. Quadratic people, did you get a time of 3.9166422? I'll go 3.917. Because that's still not my final answer, so I'm going to avoid rounding off as long as I can. What do they want me to find in this question? The range. Okay. dx equals vxt, which is going to be 17.32 times 3.917 times 17.32. You get a range of 67.8 meters, plus or minus 0.1 meter, either direction. Now, if you got that right, that gets you 4 marks. Otherwise, how would I mark this? I would give you 1 mark for finding the components, half mark for each one. I would give you 1 mark for finding time. I don't care how you find time, quadratic or finding V final. I would give you 1 mark if I saw that you had written dx equals vxt, that you had clued in that you were finding a horizontal range and that you didn't need the acceleration, and then 1 mark for the answer. Okay. What's this quiz out of then? Is it out of 21? Did I add it up right? I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, it's out of 21. Can you give yourself a clear score out of 21, please? At the top of the page. And if you need to lawyer with me, now is the time. Start on page 1. I like number 3. I like number 3. I like number 3. Number 3 is a nice question. I like number 4. Number 4 is a nice question. Number 9 is a nice question. I like number 9. I like number 9. I like number 10. I like number 15. Number 15 is kind of nice. Number 17 is nice. '22 is good. I like number 22. I like number 22. I like number 25. I like number 25. 25 is a nice question. Did I miss one here? No, I'm good with those two, but absolutely 31. Except 31, they're giving you the time. On your test, I'm giving you off a cliff at an angle, but I won't give you t. You'll have to find t. Think the last question on the quiz. Different numbers, but that's going to be on your test. I guarantee it. In fact, it'll be the second last question or third last question. Can't remember. Now we come to the scholarship question, number 33. I'm not going to say I like number 33, although that's a great one to practice. However, I will say I like number 34 and I love number 35. Does this mean you don't do any of the other questions? No, you need to do all the questions. But what I am saying is if you're stuck on the ones that I just said, you want to either go online, look at my online answer key, check with a neighbor, come by today after school, check it with me. Tomorrow after school, unfortunately, I have a staff meeting. Sorry. But I will be around today after school. I will screencast the tutorial today after school. I will also email it out as a PDF attachment. Okay? And put it online as a video. So, having said that, I'm going to give you about 20 minutes to work, and then in about 20 minutes, I'm going to say any questions you would like me to go over from the ultimate review.